So, what if you could end the war in Ukraine just by redrawing the map? It's a hugely controversial idea that's out there, a plan that basically treats territory like a bargaining chip. It sounds simple, right? But it's aimed at one of the most complex realities on the planet. The big question is, could something like this ever actually work? Let's unpack it.
And that really is the question, isn't it? Is a map just a piece of paper, or can it be a tool for peace or even a weapon of war? Today, we're going to look at every single angle of this high-stakes geopolitical gamble.
Okay, so here's our roadmap. First, we'll break down what this swap for peace proposal actually is. Then, we're going to look at where the key players stand, and believe me, they are miles apart. We'll dig into why Ukraine sees this as an impossible red line, what it would mean for the military situation on the ground, and of course, we'll look back at some haunting echoes from history. All of this leads us to that final, crucial question. Could this possibly bring a just and lasting peace?
All right, first up, let's really unpack the plan itself. At its heart, this is all about applying a very business-like, almost transactional way of thinking to a conflict that is brutal, emotional, and deeply personal. This one sentence, reported back in 2024, pretty much says it all. The key words are swapping and betterment of both. You see how it frames the conflict? It's not about justice or international law or who's right or wrong. It's a transaction. It sees sovereign territory as an asset that can be traded to close a deal.
So let's be super clear about what we mean by territorial swap. I mean, it takes the very idea of land, something nations define themselves by, something people are literally dying for, and it turns it into a negotiable asset. It's this idea that you can just move a line on a map to make the fighting stop, which makes the land itself the main bargaining chip.
So what's the logic behind this approach? Well, first and foremost, the public reason is humanitarian, to stop the incredible suffering and the massive number of casualties. The method? Classic, high-stakes personal diplomacy. There was even talk of a meeting in Alaska, a neutral spot significantly outside the jurisdiction of the International Criminal Court. This really gets to the core of it, a transactional worldview where peace is the product and territory is the price. And to get everyone to even consider the deal, the plan relies on pressure, using economic threats like tariffs to force them to the table.
But here's the thing about a transaction. You need a buyer and a seller who can agree on the price. And that is exactly where this simple plan smacks right into a very complex reality. We're talking three leaders with three totally different and frankly irreconcilable ideas of what peace even looks like. And here it is, the fundamental deadlock laid bare. On one side, you have a proposal for a swap. In the middle, you'll have Vladimir Putin, who isn't talking about a swap at all. He's demanding Ukraine just give up all the territory Russia has seized since 2014, period. And then you have President Zelensky, for whom the very idea of trading away land is just an absolute categorical non-starter. I mean, they're not just on different pages. They're reading from completely different books. Now, to really get why this plan is probably dead on arrival, you have to look deeper at Ukraine's position. For Kyiv, this is not just a political preference. It's a fundamental red line that's baked into their laws, their sense of sovereignty, and their very national survival. President Zelensky's words here, man, they just cut right to the heart of it. Any deal made without Ukraine is a deal made against Ukraine. This is that core principle you hear about. Nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine. So from his perspective, a plan like this isn't a peace deal. It's a dead decision before it even gets off the ground. And listen, this isn't just talk. It is literally hardwired into Ukrainian law. Their constitution explicitly says the country's territory is indivisible and inviolable. It makes it the president's sworn duty to guarantee that integrity. And on top of that, any change would require a national referendum. I mean, can you imagine trying to get 3 million signatures to start a vote on giving up land while you're in the middle of a fight for your life? It's just not going to happen. You combine that legal wall with the absolute resolve of the military commanders on the ground, and you have an almost insurmountable barrier to any kind of land for peace deal. Okay, so let's move past the politics and the law for a second. What would a land swap actually mean on the ground for Ukraine's ability to defend itself down the road?
Well, military analysts paint a really grim picture. According to a pretty stark warning from the Institute for the Study of War, you might know them as ISW, this isn't just about losing some ground on a map. Their analysis shows that giving up this specific territory would be like strategically dismantling Ukraine's entire defensive backbone. Analysts describe what would happen as a catastrophic chain reaction. So it starts with giving up Donetsk, but what that really means is abandoning the fortress belt. These are heavy-duty defensive lines that have been built up for nearly a decade. And once that fortress is gone, Ukraine is just left exposed, trying to defend wide-open, flat land, which is a nightmare. So the end result? It's chilling. Russia doesn't just get more land, it gets a perfect strategic launchpad, making Ukraine permanently vulnerable to the next attack. Yeah, this table just lays out what a brutal zero-sum game this is. Just look at the pattern. Every single strategic loss for Ukraine is a direct compounding win for Russia. Ukraine loses its defensive fortresses, it loses access to the Black Sea, it loses control over critical energy infrastructure, and what does Russia get in return? It solidifies its land bridge to Crimea and gets perfect staging grounds for future offensives. It's a trade that doesn't just end this conflict, you could argue it makes the next one almost inevitable. You know, this whole idea of trading land for a promise of peace, it's not exactly new. It's been tried before. So we have to ask the question, what does history teach us about the dangers of this kind of deal? The most infamous example, of course, is the Munich Agreement of 1938. As you can see from this timeline, Czechoslovakia's Sudetenland was just handed over to Nazi Germany to get a promise of peace. The British Prime Minister at the time, Neville Chamberlain, famously came home and declared, "Peace for our time." But just 6 months later, Hitler broke the deal and took the rest of the country. And about a year after that, World War II began. It is the ultimate cautionary tale about trying to appease an aggressor. So history offers two really clear and frankly very painful lessons here. The first, from Munich, is that rewarding an aggressor with land doesn't usually satisfy them. More often than not, it just emboldens them. And the second lesson, from the Paris Peace Accords that ended the Vietnam War, is that any peace deal that is forced upon an unwilling side is rarely a peace that actually lasts. Both of these historical examples suggest that a deal like the one being proposed is built on a very fragile foundation. Okay, so let's pull all these threads together. When you look at everything, the politics, the law, the military reality, the history, what is the core dilemma here? What is it that's preventing a simple transactional deal from delivering a truly just and lasting peace? When you boil it all down, the path to this kind of simple deal is blocked by four massive hurdles. First, you've got those totally irreconcilable goals. Russia wants a Ukraine it can control. Ukraine demands to be a fully sovereign nation. Second, there's a level of distrust so deep, so profound, that no promise or signature on a piece of paper can be believed. Third, the deal itself would basically shatter a core principle of international order, that you can't just take territory by force. And finally, and maybe this is the most dangerous of all, you have the moral hazard. The fear that if you reward this invasion, you're just giving a green light for the next one, somewhere else in the world. So at the end of the day, we're left with one final, very tough question. Does a deal that rewards aggression by redrawing a map actually lead to peace? Or does it just press pause, setting the stage for an even bloodier conflict down the line? That is the complex reality hiding behind the simple plan. Thanks for joining us.